Back to order. Sorry for being a few minutes late. We had an executive session prior to this. First item on the agenda would, item number 4, would be public forum. Does anyone wish to speak in the public forum? Okay, seeing none, move to the Teaching and Learning Showcase, which is the Seal of Biliteracy. Dr. Galston.
Thank you very much. Actually, if you recall at a previous meeting, we discussed the Seal of Biliteracy as being something that we would be moving forward with next year for the class of 2020. And at this point in time, we think it's a good opportunity to share with the school committee about the Seal of Biliteracy, and with the hopes of moving forward and putting it in our student handbooks over the summer so that we can kick it off in September to have our students ready to roll and receive that Seal of Biliteracy when they graduate. So Adam Silverberg is here this evening as the World Language Coordinator, and he's going to give us an overview along with someone else.
She's coming.
And there she is.
There she is.
Kate Phillipson is our English Learner Coordinator for the district as well. So both of them are working together on this project, and they're going to provide us with an overview of the Seal of Biliteracy.
Good. Thanks. Good evening, school committee. So yeah, we're just going to give you a little brief overview of what the Seal of Biliteracy is, why to support it, how we'll implement it, and hopefully we'll all approve it. And next year we'll have our first class use it. So the Seal of Biliteracy is a nationally and state recognized seal that recognizes graduates who are proficient in more than one language in the 4 skills of language: reading, speaking, listening, and writing. And the hope would be the students that are able to prove that would have their the seal stamped on their diplomas and their transcripts that they could send off to colleges and promote themselves when they have job applications and things like that they can put on their resume. And we would like to recognize those seniors at senior awards night and at graduation. So you wanted to? Yeah, you go.
So the reasons why we would want your support for the seal is there are 59 languages spoken throughout the district, not just at Watertown High School. It would honor the many cultures and languages that we have here in Watertown, and it would also recognize the value of diversity. In addition to that, bilingualism is a 21st century skill, so we would be preparing our students for postgraduate lives so that they could get a variety of different jobs and have many more options available to them in their futures.
So we can both speak, because we have so many English language learners as well as the students taking the language classes that we offer, that there will be kind of 2 different, it's the same path but different ways to achieve it. So Kay can speak about the English language learners achieving the English side of it.
Right, so if you're an English language learner, you would either need to get a 240 plus on the MCAS, you'd have to pass the MCAS, or a 4.2 overall on the access test, which is the state test for English language, with a 3.9 composite literacy score, meaning the reading and writing score would have to be a 3.9. This is what the state requirements are in order to be exited from the English programs.
And so students who come in not in the EL program, but just come in learning another language, they also would have to pass the MCAS at a 240. And then they would have to score an intermediate high on the ACTFL, the American Council for Teaching Foreign Languages, their standard, their scores. And we've decided to go with the APPLE test, which is sponsored by ACTFL. I've had experience this year with 8th graders taking the APPLE test. It's a very simple procedure to register students, and one of us or somebody would proctor the tests for them. So an intermediate high, if you're curious, they can speak in multiple tenses on multiple subjects. They're not accurate 100% of the time, but they don't really get sidetracked when you're having a conversation about global, like big picture, describe the scene, narrate in the past, present, or future. And then there's also a Seal of Biliteracy with distinction, which just shows more proficiency, I would say. So you would need a 260, that's for anybody on the MCAS English, and you would need to score an advanced low on the APPLE test. And this would be in all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
So just to make it clear, if you were an English learner, you'd have to show your proficiency in English, but also have to show proficiency in whatever your first language, or second or third, or however many languages you have. So it doesn't matter if you're an native English speaker learning another language, or an English speaker learning, or a non-English speaker learning English.
So what we've decided is, when we come back, if this is approved, then in the fall, we will just promote the tests. We'll promote why we would take it, much like this bilingualism is a gift campaign. We would get flyers out around the school and just really promote it among the seniors. We would give them until December to register whether or not they want to take one of these Apple tests. And by December, they would register. I would put their names into the Apple system, and in March, we would proctor the tests. I believe it would take almost a full day. Apple says it would take 2 hours for the 4 tests, but I've heard it's longer than that, so it would be probably full or half day. And we would take the tests, and so this year with the 8th graders, they were really quick on scoring the tests, just the interpersonal speaking one, but they were quick. So I think by mid-April, we would probably know who among the seniors would qualify for the seal of biliteracy as the second language part, and we would have their MCAS from 10th grade or any other time that they've taken it before. And
if we were waiting for the access scores, those come usually in the end of May, beginning of June. So it'd be cutting it real close, but we could do it.
And then we've decided that we would like the high school to pay for the tests for an equity issue piece. There are 4 Apple tests. Well, the MCAS is free, and there are 4 Apple tests that the interpersonal speaking is $10, and sorry, there's 3 tests, and the other 2 tests are $5 each. So it would be $20 per student, and we said if every senior took the test, it would be about $1,000 out of the budget, but we don't envision every senior taking the test, and especially in the first year, I believe schools get up to 25 students to pass the test, and as low as 1 to 5. So in that first year, we feel like we can cover the budget for an equity's sake. And then here are some languages offered by the Apple test. You can see that Arabic, Spanish, and Italian, the 3 main languages we offer at the high school, are all part of the Apple test. And then are some of the other...
The main languages represented by other speakers of other languages would be Spanish.
Oh, no, back.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks. Would be Spanish, Portuguese, and Pushtu, which is not up there, or Armenian, which is also not up there, but I'll be discussing how we will do that on the next slide. Actually, 2 slides, but that's all right. So
Yeah.
if there's a language that doesn't have a test, there are a number of portfolio options that have been developed by the DESE. We can hire an evaluator, basically hire an interpreter who would help us find level appropriate texts and also grade their speaking and listening and reading and writing skills. There's a stamped test which has a couple of additional languages, but it looks like it's just Hebrew and Polish, so.
They have the Apple languages plus Hebrew and Polish.
Right, so not too much extra. And then Lexikey, which is an on-demand video interpreting service that we use in the district, also has just recently developed an on-demand video portfolio assessment for this kind of assessment, which probably would be our most affordable option. Because you would have them call an interpreter and have the conversation, and then we could submit any written samples or, get writing to the interpreters, and then have them read a passage, for example, and then explain what happened in the passage.
So then other further responsibilities, once we've been approved, we can submit that we would like to participate to the Department of Education. They then send us the seal that would go on the diplomas and transcripts. And then as far as we're concerned, we would just promote in the fall and try and get as many students interested in continuing their languages and to take the tests. And after that, I think we would promote it among the elementary and middle schools just to say, you know what, eventually this is what you can do if you stick with your language or if you speak it at home and honor those home cultures and languages.
And it actually could be beneficial for folks who are only speaking the language at home. I know that a lot of families do send their children to different schools, Armenian school or Portuguese school or Spanish school on the weekend, but it might continue furthering their literacy skills, because I feel like a lot of the heritage language, so to speak, or the languages spoken at home are generally oral, so listening and speaking skills, and there's less focus on reading and writing. But if we truly want our students to be 21st century ready, we would want them to be proficient in all 4 domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So we would hope that this would encourage folks to actually, work on the literacy skills as well.
So that's it for our presentation.
All right.
Got any
No,
questions?
thank you very much. I mean, very interesting, I think, an important topic. Questions, comments? Lily?
Question and comment. First of all, this is probably going to be the easiest vote that I will ever have to do. But I fully support bilingualism. I'm raising my children bilingual. But I think one of my questions is, so my understanding, our school started the Seal of Biliteracy in Cambridge this past year, and they had said that the AP exams, if they score 5, can replace some of these. Is that going to be the case here? So if they score 5 on the Spanish AP or something like that, can
Yeah, the only reason why we didn't include that is because those results come out in the summer. So I suppose we could honor the seniors after graduation.
or if
but-
they took it as a junior?
Or if
then
they
Yeah,
took it as a
and
junior.
in my 5 years, we've only had 1 junior take it.
Okay.
So in that sense, yes, the state does
Potentially.
recognize 5 on the AP tests. Also, we didn't present that because,
You just don't have, you don't have as many juniors taking it.
correct.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yes, Amy?
Does this change the required years that you need to take a language in high school?
So no, in high school, we actually don't have a graduation requirement. We base it on the state recommendations for taking, the state college recommendations for taking 2 years of a language. So no, they're 2 separate issues.
So most cases that the student would take the language for 4 years and then take this
Yeah,
exam.
I would envision students who have been in language for 4 years would,
So just when you're promoting it, that it's something that you'd say, you'd highly recommend that they choose a language that they would want to take 4 years of?
yeah, correct. And I think students would probably be more apt to take languages for longer if this was an end goal in mind too.
Yes, Kendra?
Thank you for the presentation. Are you also going to encourage juniors to do this? I only ask because if they want to put it on their college applications, that would have to happen before, March or April of their senior year. And is that something you would envision happening often? I just,
Yeah, we didn't consider it this time around, but I don't see why we wouldn't. I'm not 100% sure how prepared a junior taking language would be as a second language, although your side might be
Yeah.
more prepared.
well, we're going to, in a few years, we're going to have
Right.
elementary schools.
Right.
who have been
In a
taking
few
Spanish
years, we'll be very prepared.
kindergarten.
Right.
So
Right.
I just think,
Mhm.
as they move up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
think about how that will change our language department in middle school.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think in the future, if somebody feels that they're ready whenever, I don't see why we wouldn't offer it whenever they feel they're ready. Perhaps they could try it every year.
Thank you.
But I don't think we could go lower than 10th grade, because you'd have to pass the MCAS,
MCAS.
or you'd have to be in high school. I don't think
Right.
that you could
Like
try
a
to do this.
sophomore at the
Yeah.
earliest.
Yeah.
Understood. Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Eileen?
So I had thought of that college application point because I was trying to think of how to show students that this is a good thing. Now, I know that if you get a high score on an AP language exam, many times colleges will let you opt out of a language requirement. Are there any colleges which do something like that for this?
I believe, I haven't researched 100%, but I believe they would honor something like this because,
So
Because you'll have shown,
that would be a good selling point. I
Yeah.
mean, there's some intrinsic advantage. And then the
my
other,
guess is that state schools would honor it.
so we should make sure that that's part of the package that we're conveying to students. And then the other thing is, say you took this Apple test in some other school. So does your system allow for that to be sufficient, or do they have to take it when they're with us? Because it's silent here, I don't know.
Yeah, the Apple test is a standardized test as long as it was proctored by some sort of official entity at that school. I don't see why we wouldn't take it.
Same for MCAS or Access, if they
Yeah.
took it in
Right,
another
so
school.
because it's a new program, I think it's important to spell out the answers to every
Yeah,
question. I like this.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I have a couple quick ones. Pardon?
Someone in the audience had a question.
I-
Yeah. No, you do not. We're not going to limit it to just students taking a foreign language. If you feel that you're ready to take a test that proves your proficiency, then by all means.
Right, so, I mean, actually, I would think that a fair number of students, that English language learners would probably be in a better position to do this than some people for whom English is their main language that they grew up with at home. So yeah, I don't know exactly what numbers that would be, but I would actually look for more on that side, at least initially,
Yeah.
than on the people who are based in English language.
Mm-hmm.
The requirements, it sounds like the state has a kind of variety of requirements that you can pick from, and so, because like AP is the state has said that's okay, but you've chosen not to, so I'm just quite, does each?
It wasn't that we chose not to.
Well, it's just that you didn't see that it would likely come up, right?
Right, if we're only going to test seniors, which that was the thought originally,
Right.
then we didn't think it would come up, but if we're going to offer it to juniors and seniors, then
Okay.
it might come up.
Well, I guess my general question are there a set of state requirements?
Yes.
And then what do we do at the district level different than the state requirements? I mean, I'm not clear
Yeah.
how we at the district level vary from what the state requires.
Yeah, no, we would not vary from what the state requires. So the state requires an I-5 or an I-6 on the Apple test. They do have their own standards on the stamp test, which I haven't proctored or given, and they have the same languages as the Apple test, besides Polish and Hebrew. So those were the requirements for that, and the state does say a 5 on the AP
Okay.
test too.
Okay.
So yes, we should have presented on that as
Okay.
well, but
Okay. Well, I think the point about, someone at the junior level, I think is a good one to think about, because I can imagine certainly that happening, particularly when the elementary kids
Yeah.
get to that level, get to that point. So I would assume this is something we need to approve, correct?
I think that would be best.
Right. And we're not going to do it today.
You don't have to now.
We don't have to now, but I think we need to do that probably at our July meeting or in August, if you're going to move forward this coming year.
Yeah, so technically, we're not changing graduation requirements, so that's one thing.
Right.
But we are changing the diploma, and you are the diploma granting authority, so.
Right.
But that can be done anytime throughout the course of the year before we get ready to produce diplomas that will have the seal.
Right.
So,
But I think if you're going to start the program in the
Yep.
fall, so it'll come back to us, I would say, perhaps at the July meeting or
I
August.
guess that was the thought, yeah.
Either one, we'll put it as an action item. But I think this is a good introduction to it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Great.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
thanks for the support.
All
Yeah,
right,
that's great.
Thanks.
okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
why wouldn't we just vote on this now? If we read the
Well-
documentation and looked at the presentation?
We didn't list it as an action item, and so I'm hesitant to put something
Fine.
before the committee to
That's
vote
fine.
on if they didn't know walking in.
Good point, good point.
Walking in. And I think with the timing as such, we got time.
Yeah.
Yes.
What I like particularly about this is it's an acknowledgement that students have knowledge and skills that we didn't necessarily teach them, that they're different, each one, and a lot of them have expertise in areas that we value, but we don't necessarily teach.
Yeah. Good. All right. Again, thank you for the presentation. Next item would be recognitions. Dr. Galston.
Excellent, thank you. So, as is tradition, we would like to recognize the spring athletes who have received distinction in their fields, in their sports, And so we've invited the athletic director, Ryan Murphy, to provide an overview of our spring sports athletes, and also just a general statement about his first year as athletic director and what he's seen in terms of the strengths of our athletic program.
All right, thank you very much for having me. Pleasure being here. We have a couple of young men with us today. We have Corinne Monroe, Mungay Camara, and Maxwell Jusen. They're on the 4x100 team for our outdoor track program, and they just broke the school record. They went undefeated head-to-head in the Middlesex League. We're the smallest team in the Middlesex League by a good margin. We have about 657 students, and some of the teams we go against have almost 2,000 students, and we won every single one. Then they went to All States was next, I believe, and then States, then All States. Then they went to New England's, and then they went all the way to Nationals, and they competed in Nationals, which is a huge honor for a small school. Incredibly impressive. Two people who couldn't make it tonight who were on the team during the course of the year were Nathan Follett and Mason Andre, and their names will be on the wall at the school. Doesn't happen often. They broke the record. I think it had been standing since 2008, and it was a very impressive time. And we look forward to trying to get some kids to break it in the future, but I think it's going to be standard for a while. We had a lot of seniors on the team, and it's not easy to do. We also had Abigail Peterson, who couldn't make it tonight, who broke the high jump record for women, which was a great performance. I think the past record was 5.2. I think she got up to as high as 5.5 this year, which is extremely impressive. She went to Nationals as well, went through the same process, States, All States, New England's, and then to Nationals. So that was great to see. And then Mungay pretty much broke every record that we have in every event that he ran. Phenomenal athlete, was an All-American in the winter, which is few and far between anywhere, let alone here in Watertown with such a small group, which was a great honor. And then he did the emerging athlete division for the spring, and he actually broke, I believe it was like the national record, the meet record for 5 minutes, and then someone else beat it by, I think, 0.01 of a second, and so then he came in second, but still phenomenal. The boys can kind of talk if they want a little bit about the weekend, but there was about 7,500 athletes there, and it was a great event, so I'd say by far track was our best, most, I don't want to say it's something bad on TV, probably our most successful in the spring is probably the best way to put it. So the seniors that are moving on will be missed, and they'll be hard to replace, but definitely the younger kids that are coming up have something to strive towards now moving forward. Spring sports overall were a great success. Numbers were up in some sports, of course, down in some others, and we'll look to fix that for next year. Overall, for the year, the DPW was phenomenal. It was the worst spring we've ever had, rain-wise, and we only canceled one game. And whenever we called, they answered the call. I'm sure after a while they probably didn't want to answer the call when they saw me calling because they knew what I was going to ask, but they always got it done. We work very well with recreation. We're currently working with some of the coaches to kind of work on getting kids home a little earlier in the fall, which I think is going very successfully. We're going to be meeting for our annual scheduling meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, and that should go well. It's usually a pretty long meeting, but then everyone knows where they're going to be for the whole fall, which goes well. All the coaches were great to work with. Hopefully all of them will come back. Hopefully I didn't scare anybody away in the first year. And we'll just try to keep making improvements. Anybody has any suggestions for next year, we're always open to taking them. And great job by these young men right here, and we'll look forward to the future. Thank you.
All right. So, questions or comments? Yes, Mark.
I just want to congratulate all of you and the ones that weren't here. Take a softball.
Any other questions or comments? Yep.
I teach in Lexington High School, and a lot of my students are also runners, and they really enjoy talking to you guys and really enjoyed competing against you. Congratulations on the great season. They were never upset to get beat by you guys, so.
Maybe a little upset. They recognize good talent.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's up next for you guys? To Wentworth? Okay. Okay. Wow. Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, congratulations again. You set new records, so you set the bar high for the next group. And to Athletic Director, thank you very much for your first year. Yeah. It's great to have all those records that you can take some credit for that.
I can do some things well, but speed's not my strong suit. I didn't get many pointers, that's for sure. They did a great job on their own, and then coaches, both their coaches will be retiring.
Yep.
Coach Whitney and Coach Sullivan, they're together at Watertown for probably over 40 years. There's the time they decided to step down, which
Yeah.
we try to beg them to stay, but hopefully we can get someone else in there and keep it going. Definitely move it right. 42 boys this spring. That's the most we've done in a long time, so we're gonna try to keep moving in the same
Yeah,
direction.
okay, great. Well, again, congratulations. Wish you all the best. All right, thank you. Next item are the presentations and discussions. We've got two different reports that are going to, for us. The first one, the first one's a report by the superintendent on initiatives as part of the district improvement strategy for the four-year district, the three-year district improvement strategy. And this is the first year, this past year is the first year of it. And so the superintendent sent us a report, and she's going to speak to some of the accomplishments this past year. Let me just preface it with a brief comment that what we're going to hear tonight is kind of an update on some of the key initiatives that were part of this strategy for this year. And then in the fall, we'll come back to it when there's more kind of numeric data available, MCAS, iReady, a variety of different other tools that we have that we'll be able to kind of add to this reflection on the 2018-19 year. So this is kind of part one, and part two will be probably late September or October. Dr. Galston.
Thank you very much. So before we get started, I just wanted to once again mention that the work that we are going to review this evening was based on the extremely strong efforts of all of our educators in the Watertown Public Schools, our district leadership team, and the strategy team. I think all working together, we put together this district improvement strategy that is a four-year plan, and this is the first year of 4 years. We acknowledge that, generally these plans might only be for 3 years, but since this is the first time that we've launched this major district improvement strategy, the first year was going to be the year to figure out what could we accomplish and what was our capacity. So I think we've done very well with our first year, but we've also learned a lot of lessons along the way about what is achievable within the course of 1 year. So once again, I would like to just refresh our community around our mission. We set this mission as the strategy team, which is that Watertown Public Schools prepares all students for life by engaging them in a challenging and meaningful education within an inclusive and diverse community. And our vision is to inspire excellence for all and to inspire our students to explore and shape the world around them. And these were framed within our core values of equity, excellence, and community. And from those basic, precepts and tenets, we created 4 strategic objectives. These strategic objectives were determined to be high leverage items that we think could help us to achieve our mission and our vision as a district. And when we created this plan, and I discussed the fact that it's a 4-year plan, these objectives do not change. They stay constant for the 4 years. But underneath them, the actual initiatives will change along the way based upon the progress that is made. So the 4 strategic objectives, I'm not going to read them here, but we're going to go over them in terms of the initiatives and then the action plans that were developed and how it is that we did along the way. So the first objective was to establish systems and structures that ensure all Watertown Public Schools students receive what they need to develop and achieve to their full academic, social, and emotional potential. So the 4 initiatives that we created underneath this, now ideally you might be able to make progress on the initiatives within the year, but many of these actually will carry on for several years. But the first initiative was to create a socially, emotionally, physically safe and equitable school environment that meets the needs of the whole child, family, staff, and community. One of the major initiatives that, or one of the major action steps that we had to achieve this initiative this year was the implementation of responsive classroom in our elementary schools, K-5, and that is something that was very successfully launched across the board. And in-depth training was provided for our teachers, and then ongoing support throughout the course of the year. And one of the things that we did was form responsive classroom implementation teams at all the elementary schools that helped, they met monthly to help to monitor the implementation, and across the board, we do believe that we had a great launch. That doesn't mean that we are fully and 100% done. We have another round of teachers that are being trained this summer, and we will continue that work for as long as we have the program, which hopefully will be for as long as we can know. So that is one thing on the first initiative that we have done. But beyond that, this is definitely something that we value and is very important to us in terms of social emotional learning for all of our students, not just at the elementary level, but across the board. So the second initiative was to expand the Watertown Public Schools district recruitment and hiring policies and practices in order to attract, hire, and retain a diverse Watertown Public Schools workforce that reflects the students that we serve. So we had created action steps underneath this initiative that we were not able to achieve this year, but that we will be moving on to next year. However, that being said, I think that since this is clearly articulated and stated, it is something that our leadership team has been working on in terms of hiring, and now we need to make sure that when we hire, teachers of color, that we are able to support them, or administrators for that matter, that we are able to support them and retain them throughout the years. But next year will be the year that we're going to work, deeply on creating a plan to attract and hire and retain the diverse workforce. I would mention that many of the teachers that I've interviewed in the last couple of days in terms of new hires, one of the things that I'm most impressed with is that many of them are either bilingual or trilingual. And I think that that is something that's very important for our students, to have staff that are able to communicate in languages other than English. So that is something that I've noticed that the candidates being put forth definitely have that as a skill set. So the third initiative is to engage all Watertown Public Schools faculty and staff in embracing anti-bias and inclusive practices that promote equity and ensure all students feel valued and supported in their learning. I think if you read that, you know that this isn't something that you achieve in 1 year, and it isn't something necessarily that you achieve in 4 years, but it is something that we need to actively engage in terms of determining how we best do that within our schools. So this year, one of the things that we accomplished was forming a partnership with Facing History and ourselves to provide professional development in the coming year for staff, and also to support our equity leadership team. And we've also explored using Ideas, which is it's out of EDCO, and Ideas will also complement the work of Facing History and Ourselves. We feel that, Facing History and Ourselves is certainly curriculum-based and also teacher professional development, but the EDCO Ideas is really about teacher professional development and maybe working with the community. So we do believe that those two organizations will support the work that we're doing. We reconstituted the equity leadership team. That was the RIDES team from last year. We reposted it and have a brand new membership, and it's representative of all of our grade levels, elementary through high school. And we're very excited to begin that work together, and we will be meeting, we've already met this year, and we'll be meeting this summer to plan for our coming year's activities. And then the fourth initiative is developing and implementing a comprehensive pre-K to 12 multi-tiered system of support. This is the one initiative that I would have to say we all agree as a community that this is something that's going to definitely need to be moved into next year. And as I said in my memo, this is not something that it's not that we don't do tiered systems of support within our schools. It's just that we don't have a very clearly articulated system, but we absolutely intervene on behalf of our students using tiered levels of support. But again, we just haven't had the ability or the capacity, given all that we've been doing, to put together a team to solidly create that plan. But it is moved for next year, and we're very optimistic that that will be something that we accomplish. One of the first steps, you can keep going, that's fine. One of the first steps that we'll do is really looking at the district curriculum accommodation plan, which is the first steps to creating your multi-tiered system of support. So I just wanted to highlight some of the accomplishments. I've already mentioned this, but the implementation of responsive classroom K-5 was very successful, and we have the building-based teams. One thing that we can share with the community is that the secondary SEL team that's been meeting all year long has selected responsive advisory for the middle school. So that is something that we'll be implementing at the middle school for next year, and training will be happening this summer as well. Mentioned that we established the equity leadership team and the partnership with Facing History and Ourselves and Ideas. And certainly we are committed to diversifying the Watertown Public Schools workforce, and that is something that we will be more systematic about next year. Okay. Our strategic objective 2 is to support instructional excellence by building and implementing a cohesive, coherent, and aligned educational program that promotes high expectations, authorship, and student agency. The first initiative is to develop in students and adults a growth mindset that enables them to communicate, collaborate, persevere, respond to different learning environments, and express creativity. Certainly that is something that we are striving for regularly within our every day-to-day interaction with our students. But it is something, again, that you don't develop a growth mindset in 1 year, and it is something that we're committed to over the course of this plan. The second initiative is to ensure that curriculum is articulated and aligned to the standards pre-K to 12. Once again, you will see this initiative for the 4 years, but certainly great work has been done in terms of aligning our curriculum to the standards, and we have our curriculum alignment plan, and many teams actually are beginning work tomorrow. Is that correct, Dr. McGinnis? Yep. To continue the work of curriculum mapping using the Understanding by Design framework, but that is something that will take many years to fully accomplish. And then Initiative 3, promoting authorship and agency through authentic learning experiences and demonstrations of understanding. One good example of how it is that we support this is the continued partnership with the Buck Institute for project-based learning. And another example is the utilization of Understanding by Design as the core curriculum framework model that we use for developing curriculum. And we've talked about this together as a school committee, but Understanding by Design has at its heart making sure that students truly understand what it is or why it is that they're learning what they're learning, and they can see the transference that what they're learning has in their lives. So, and then Initiative 4 is providing embedded or ongoing professional learning opportunities for all staff focused on improvement in the instructional core. So two really good and strong examples. There are many examples of this, but two examples that I can give you pretty clearly are the use of instructional coaches. We have literacy and math coaches at the elementary level. This year we were able to fund 2 additional ones. So we have 2 literacy and 2 math at the elementary level. They've been working with teachers in coaching cycles where they circle back and work with teachers on an ongoing basis to support the delivery of curriculum and instruction, and it has been very beneficial. And not only is it just supporting teachers with instruction, but it's looking at data and using data to inform instruction and supporting teachers, again, all year long, not just a one and done. And we're very excited about the fact that we were able to fund instructional coaches for the middle school next year, one for humanities and one for math and science. So I think I've already just said all these things. But just a couple of highlights that I haven't mentioned. The universal PSATs for all students in grades 10 and 11. That was a very exciting opportunity for our students and our teachers as well, because they were able to use the data in terms of looking at student strengths and opportunities for growth. We've already talked a lot about iReady at the school committee level, but that is something that we are very excited about. Especially, I think we had a far more successful implementation at elementary, but that's probably due to the fact that we have the coaches, and that has been a focus for us. But it does not mean that middle school and grade 9 didn't also benefit. But I think that with the coaches, it was far more easy for the teachers to interface with the data in K to 5, and we did our learning walks, and very important, and I think it's not necessarily clearly stated in the initiatives, but the commitment in Watertown to one-to-one technology for our students in grades 3 through 12 is just an amazing commitment, and is something that is not seen in many districts. And that for high school, it's one-to-one technology to take home. Middle school students have access to their Chromebooks all day long, and then in grades 3, 4, and 5, there are dedicated carts for every classroom. So students, when you take away the barrier of, well, I can't implement the technology because I don't have the device, then it just teachers have an infinite amount of opportunities. I think we're good. So our strategic objective 3, foster caring and collaborative relationships among and within schools, families, and community members. So this is certainly something that required support not just from the school department, but from our PTOs and our families. But our first initiative was to create welcoming environments in each of the schools for everyone. Just a couple of examples, certainly in the entryways of our schools, we tried really hard to make sure that people felt welcome coming in. I think especially at the elementary, you'll know that I think of the Hosmer, there's, every language that is spoken, there's, a nice welcoming sign. But it's not just a sign, it's, making sure that people feel comfortable coming into our schools. The Hosmer, not just to play to the Hosmer, but they did have the welcoming committee, which paired up a member of the community with new families to make sure that they feel comfortable about being in the Hosmer. We have our liaison program for, our push-to Portuguese and Spanish speakers to make sure that parents are easily able to interface with the schools. So I think we're doing really well with Initiative 1. Initiative 2 is to utilize tools and create systems to support communication reaching all members of the Watertown Public Schools community. One of the major accomplishments under here is the relaunching and overhaul of the Watertown Public Schools webpage. But it's not just the webpage. It's the fact that we have put in place content curators. So we have a dedicated individual in each of the buildings and one for the district they're tasked with making sure that the news on the pages is up to date, that they go through and promote whatever it is that they need to within the schools. And they're also in charge of the Facebook pages, which then feed into the Twitter feed. So we're trying to not just look at a web presence as the only way that people get information, but exploring those options. So the content curators have been fantastic, and I think that that's essential for keeping our information current. And then ensuring that all Watertown Public Schools community members can contribute to the district's continuous improvement. So a couple of things, and although this wasn't planned, I think one thing that we've initiated this year, and I look forward to working with for as long as possible, is the Anti-Bias Coalition. So I think that having a group of people that, when we are trying to work through the equity work that we have, that are willing to come and give of their time and their ideas, and then, as we move forward, do the work, is very vital and very important. And although that, again, it wasn't planned and it came from, incidences that we had within our schools, that group is such a strong bridge between community organizations and the schools. I think that's always been kind of a barrier when we have all these amazing community organizations in Watertown. It's like, how do you make those connections with the schools? So I think this group is one of the ways that we can do that. But certainly, ongoing, our principals hold principal coffees, our PTO organizations are strong. We try to get feedback in from parents and families to help us to improve. And so that's something that we continue to work on and move forward with. And then Initiative 4 is to enable and support collaborative inquiry to promote continuous learning. One of the examples of this is our professional learning teams that we have, where teachers work together every month. They meet in teams. They try to figure out what it is that might be standing in the way of student learning, and they create plans to try different interventions, collect data to see if something might work that might change something, and then make changes based upon the work that they've done. So we certainly have surveyed our teachers around the professional learning teams, and for the most part, people find great reward in working with their colleagues around student learning issues or questions. This year we're pleased to present that 62% of our professional learning teams felt that they met their goals, and 25% came very close. So that's pretty good. But most important is looking at the goals that they set, which are rigorous, and they weren't easy. So when 60% meet them and 25% are close, that's pretty impressive in terms of what our teachers are doing. So again, I think I've gone over a lot of these items here. Yep, I don't think that there's anything new here that I haven't spoken about. So strategic objective 4 is build educationally appropriate, joyful learning environments that support the Watertown mission and vision. So this is really all around the work of the school building committee, but it is how it is that the school department supports the work that's being done at that larger school building committee level. So for us, it's supporting the schematic design and subsequent steps on the elementary school projects. So a great example of how it is that we're working on this this initiative, she's going to have to go back one, thank you, is that within our buildings, I think a lot of people they tune into the school building committee meetings, which is fantastic, and a lot of work gets done there. But our principals actually and our teaching staffs have met with our architects numerous times to really work through the plans and determine what's going to be best in terms of layout and where the cubby's going to go, and how should the offices be configured, and what's the best way to have people enter. So it's great to see how much participation our staff has had in terms of the schematic design, and we look forward to continuing that support. Initiative 2 is completing the MSBA eligibility period for the high school. We did that. We met all of our deliverable targets, and in December we were invited into the feasibility study, so that was very exciting. Initiative 3 is to select the owner's project manager and architect for the high school building project. We have, the school building committee has moved forward and selected the owner's project manager, and we're now engaged in the work of putting out the request for services for the architect. And once the architect is selected, then we are moving right into feasibility. So we are headed down some exciting times for the high school. And then initiative 4 is to initiate the MSBA feasibility study for the high school building project, which is what's going to happen in the fall. So that's a pretty high-level view of, I've gone over that. Should have just had the one slide, but that's okay. So I think that we are well on our way to working through our initiatives. Some of them we've met. Some of them we're going to continue on. Some of them we certainly are going to tweak and be more focused with. You know, some of the, if you've noticed, our initiatives are fairly broad. Next year, when we come to you in September, I think you'll see a narrowing of those initiatives so that they are more easily achieved within a year. But I'm very proud of the work across the board. You know, I think people, and this is just a perception, I must admit, I do believe that people see a direction and a vision for the Watertown Public Schools. And, you know, I know that it's been challenging at times for, especially at the elementary level. I mean, we've done a lot, especially in the instructional core. And this year has been, it's been, you know, to use the word again, challenging. I think that with new curriculum and with the coaches and the data that we provided, there was a lot in the beginning, but I think as the year progressed and the support that they had, I think that people have settled in and realized that this isn't going to change, that we're committed to, you know, balanced literacy, we're committed to math and focus, and I think that helps people to know that there's a direction and a vision when it comes to, you know, understanding that that all that we're doing is really just for students when all is said and done. So very pleased with the work, and I look forward to continuing in this plan next year and then see how it all comes out in 2022.
Thank you very much. I just to reiterate what you just mentioned, I do think it's really important that what this does is kind of puts us forward with a direction and a focus, which are critical for an organization this size, and it's certainly helpful from the school committee perspective to kind of recognize that there's a direction and a focus that we're trying to follow, and all of these examples of the responsive classroom and math and focus, all the rest fit into this context. So let me open it up for questions, comments from anybody? Yes.
First of all, today is actually the last day of school, so a huge thank you to every staff member of WPS and to the incredible students who made this year awesome, and to every person who's sitting here who has worked all year. It was the last day, and it was an absolutely incredible day, and I got to witness the tap out at the Lowell, which was awesome for the fifth graders. But just listening to all that's happened this year, it's overwhelming just how much work and effort has been put in to really just kind of gaining some momentum for our school district. I'm particularly thrilled with the feedback that we've gotten on the literacy program at the elementary schools, and seeing kind of that develop over the next few years, I think is going to be very exciting. My one kind of quick question, just you kind of popped in about responsive advisory, and I was just wondering if you could tell us what that was.
So I'm definitely not the expert, but, you know, it's taking the principles of responsive classroom and working through advisory. So, you know, there's an advisory block in the middle school, but as well as taking responsive classroom in the middle school in terms of being more, oh my God, developmentally appropriate. That's the word I was looking for. So, and, you know, students, advisory, they stay with their advisory and they get to build a relationship with their teacher. And I think that enables them to explore topics that, you know, might be a little bit more challenging, especially at the middle school level. But it's not like elementary where it's all day long with that teacher. But every teacher will be trained in responsive classroom. So although it'll be delivered through advisory, it'll be part of the entire building. But also, Dr. McGinnis can chime in as well, but one thing we want to make sure that people realize is that this is part of a multi-layered approach, because we know we have Kingian nonviolence at the middle school, which is so established and effective. So that is certainly going to be part of the social emotional learning curriculum for middle school, as well as the restorative circles, and, you know, there's many great things that are already happening. So this is just a way to bring coherence to the approach for, you know, positive behavior as well as discipline, you know, across all the grades. So I don't know if you wanted to add.
Yeah, just briefly, this year, at the secondary level, at both the middle and the high school, they had teams of teachers, instructional assistants, and there may have even been a student, certainly at the middle school, who examined and audited present social-emotional learning at both schools, and they came up with what the middle school is terming a mosaic of social-emotional learning programming, to include the foundation will be the responsive classroom advisory, for which we have a 4-day institute this summer. We're hiring the consultants from Responsive Classroom just the same way that we did for elementary folks, to offer it to teachers, up to 30 teachers this summer. And so this mosaic, it has that foundation, but then it also, as Dr. Galston said, includes the Kingian nonviolence virtues and values, and then also the restorative circle work that they had started to do is very effective. So their plan next year is to figure out how best to combine those in an articulated system, but they have decided to go in that direction.
Can I just
Go
say
ahead.
something? I think it's really important, what Dr. McGinnis just said is, a lot of what we're doing is building on what already existed in Watertown. So, not just with the work for social emotional learning at the middle school level, but I'm thinking about, balanced literacy. Teaching Learning Alliance and, Reader's Workshop is something that's been in Watertown for, decades, honestly. It's just a matter of re-energizing and, retraining of people, but we're not deviating from the core instructional programs or even the social emotional learning programs that we've had. We're just really providing the support for teachers to go deep and become experts at what it is that they've already been doing, so.
Yeah.
that's
And making
important.
it systematic. Mhm.
Other questions or comments on this presentation? No. All right, thank you very much for this. I think it's, again, an important kind of first year of working on this, so we'll have another year to go. And then, as I said earlier, we'll kind of revisit some of this in the fall, in September, October, late September and October, when we have kind of the data piece to it.
I actually have one question.
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation. One question on the tiered system of support.
Yes.
I know it's a big piece to work on in 1 year. Are you thinking about doing it in content areas to begin?
Yes,
Age
are you in the
area?
strategy
Yes,
team?
I am. I'd like you to talk about that. Thank you.
Yes. Well, and I think that's, the next steps when we come back in September, when I talk about the fact that you'll see more focus in the initiatives. So one of the things that the strategy team was considering, and I think that you've seen it in the school improvement plans, is really to focus on, say, literacy and develop the tiered system of support for literacy first, so that you're not trying to take on all three, which is, math, literacy, and social emotional learning. So, get the model set with one content area, and then over the course of the years, roll in the rest. But again, that's not to say that we don't intervene on students' behalf all the time, but certainly for developing the system, stick with one content area. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Next up is the second presentation, which is the Superintendent's Report on Accomplishments Related to 2018-19 Goals. So there will be a little bit of overlap between the previous one and this one. This is part of that process of setting goals for the superintendent, evaluating the superintendent, which is a little bit later on the agenda, and I'll say more about that, but this is one of those important steps in that process. So, Dr. Galston.
Excellent, thank you. So I would agree that there will be some things here that are repetitive, and I will try not to, be redundant. So at the beginning of the year, I set 6 goals for this school year, and they revolved around student learning or district improvement. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of, where I think I am in terms of the achievement of those goals. Too fast? Too fast. But one of the things that I will say is it was very healthy and rewarding to spend some time and really look back on the year and really look at the accomplishments and this is not me, honestly, these goals I might have set for myself, but really it's all about what it is that we're doing as a district. So if there's any accomplishment that I've made on these goals, it really is born from the excellent work that we have as a community. And if there's anything that needs a little bit more time, then that's on me to make sure that I'm not asking too much of my staff. And I'm certainly realizing that, with everything takes a little bit of time. So that's just what I wanted to say before we get started. And, I think that the key actions that I had set out back in September, some of them I completed and some of them, I need a little bit more time. And some of them I might have done something completely different, but at least it did set some direction, and I feel like we've accomplished a lot, and it was rewarding to spend the time going through this and, doing a self-evaluation about the goals. Because sometimes I think for all of us, we get very caught up in the day-to-day and the immediate needs that are every single moment. And I think we lose sight of some of that bigger picture stuff that we're accomplishing. And so I'm very pleased to have been able to do this. So the first goal that I set was around fair and effective educator goal setting and evaluation. So the goal was basically with the District Administrative Council, together we will develop a common understanding of what instructional excellence looks like and will promote student learning and achievement across classrooms in the Watertown Public Schools. This will be measured. One measurement was 100% of administrators and educators developing SMART goals that target student learning as part of the educator planning process. So in terms of action steps, I had set forth that, we would identify 5 key areas of performance. One of the things that we did as an administrative, not just council, but actually the larger district leadership team, was to identify power standards for evaluation. And in those power standards, we aligned those with the map of pedagogical knowledge from Research for Better Teaching. And we shared those out with our entire staff and made sure that those were the focus areas for evaluation. So when we did our evaluations, we were looking at, 8 power standards as opposed to the 42 that one could have looked at. And I think this helps not only our evaluators, but our staff to know what it is that we value and hold to be most important in terms of effective teaching. So we definitely did that. And then we met with all of our staff and completed steps 1 and 2 of the goal setting and educator plan development. So that was also complete within the timeline. One thing I would note is that in our professional learning team time, the teams of teachers could use that time in the PLTs to also work on their educator plans. So I think that that's helpful in terms of if you expect people to set a SMART goal, which, is measurable and attainable and results-oriented and time-bound, having the structure of those monthly meetings to know that you can work with your team was, I think, is very beneficial. But many teams did not use that time. They used other time, either common planning time or grade level team time to work on their goals, but that was accomplished. So the one area that I would have to say that with the best of intentions, I intended to conduct at least 6 2-hour visits in each school. I did not actually achieve that exactly. I certainly spent time with my principals and I did visits within the schools, but I didn't hit the target of 6 throughout the year. But I would say that I work very close with my principals. I do know what's going on within their buildings. Certainly I'm in the buildings to help them and support them throughout the year, especially when it comes to achieving their own goals. But that is something I need to aspire to next year as well. And then the analyzing observation write-ups at the leadership team meetings as well as individual meetings. I think one area that we've done really well at with that is actually during our learning walks. So we were able to conduct the 5 learning walks, and we spend a lot of time within those learning walks writing up claims, evidence, and impacts based upon what it is that we're seeing, and troubleshooting, or not troubleshooting, but providing each other feedback to help us to become better evaluators. So again, that's something that I would like to continue working on, but we are achieving that, but just not in that same way that I had articulated. Can we just pop back one more? Sorry if I just had the clicker. But we did achieve the 5 learning walks as part of the large district leadership team. And also there were literacy learning walks that took place at the 3 elementaries. So one of the things that I've gotten feedback on from the district leadership team is that ability to collaborate with your colleagues and learn from each other has made a huge difference in not just evaluation, but just having a common understanding of what it is that we would like to see within our classrooms. So very, very pleased with that. Okay, second goal. So effective communication with larger school community, utilize tools and create systems to support communication reaching all members of the Watertown Public Schools community as measured by increased participation and opportunities for engagement and two-way communication. So in terms of the key actions for that, certainly I've already mentioned the fact that we overhauled our webpage. Thank you. So that is something that is complete. I have not yet completely figured out the functionality of the superintendent's blog, but that is something that we'll be investigating next year. But certainly I think that the website in and of itself is, we still have work to do, don't get me wrong. I know that there's things that we can do better, but at least I think we're getting pretty good about having a coherent website. Determine a strategy for the effective use of social media, including timelines and content curation guidelines. We achieved that. And continuing the work of the marketing team. Actually, Dr. McGinnis has taken on the marketing team, and they've met throughout the year. They did a survey of both students and parents about effective ways to communicate, and use that when considering what an effective communication strategy would be. I continue to hold the superintendent's coffee hours once a month. I'm not doing it this June because school got out earlier than anticipated. But I did have them throughout the course of the year, and I think that they're very beneficial. You know, some months they're better attended than others. I think it just depends on what's on the minds of the people, but it's very important. I'm not going to speak. I think Kathy attends the meetings, Teresa attends the meetings, Ken Sterlazzi, the Director of Human Resources, Heidi, we always rotate through the meetings, and we get feedback that it could be something small, but if we hear something, then we act on it. So I really wish that more people would come to the coffees, because it is an excellent avenue to give us feedback. Things that I wouldn't, is the bar in the playground still broken? Well, I didn't even know it was broken, so let me, investigate a little bit. Or, do kids have an ability to have a snack during, in middle school? I mean, it's things that I might not even be thinking about from the school's perspective that a parent might be concerned about, or a community member. So we'll continue that tradition next year, and I would like to encourage more people to attend. I think that we provide updates to the community on pertinent issues. So not only do I send out newsletters, I'll have the end of the year newsletter out in the next couple of days. But certainly whenever something happens that I think the community needs to be aware of, we've had a couple of examples of that throughout this year. We do so as much as possible. So the monthly superintendent show, which is called the Superintendent's Notebook, I did manage to do 2 of those. I'll get better at that next year. We did, I think we had some staffing, issues along the way, but I will do that more often. And then work with the town to utilize Notify Me. I've met with the town, and I think that we're trying to go back and forth as to what was going to be the best system for that. But I think it's me going into the town's website, so that will be set up over the summer and ready to roll for September. One of the things that I know the school committee had asked as well was to be able to be included in some of the notifications that go out by schools. Actually, we did just create those lists, and so moving forward, when a principal sends out a newsletter, they'll be able to select the school committee. I just got to make sure they remember to select the school committee so that you can also receive those as well. But it's important to know that our principals are constantly contacting our families as well. It's not just from me, but the more information we can get out, the better. So goal 3, building for the future. So I don't think I need to spend too much time on this because I went over this with the district improvement plan. So if you click right through that, you'll notice that many of the key goals for the Building for the Future initiative we've hit. And I think that moving forward, I must admit, although we've been doing a lot of great and exciting things in the school building committee, once we move forward and begin the actual, construction design documents and the feasibility study for the high school, we are going to have to be even more proactive about the communication, so that'll be a definite goal for next year as well. Goal 4, increase student achievement for all students in the Watertown Public Schools. So this is working with the Watertown Public Schools faculty, staff, and administrators. Increase overall student achievement and growth for all students as measured by predicted achievement and growth targets on the iReady assessments. And I said that we were going to set specific targets in October, but I think that since that was a brand new thing for us, we didn't actually have the information or the knowledge, honestly, the knowledge about what those targets would be. But next year, that'll be something that I provide right away, because we will have those targets set. So if you flip to the next one. So I think the thing about iReady, and I look forward to sharing with you, results in the fall, especially looking at the elementary data. It's amazing to see that students, we not only, and we'll go over this again, and I can't prepare it yet because I don't have all the data in, but I can give you a little brief snapshot of the fact that at the elementary level, for many of our students, not only did they hit the predicted targets, but they hit their stretch targets as well. So that's something that's really impressive for us. So it's not just taking kids where we predict they should be, but actually stretching and taking them beyond. So that's the type of information that we'll be able to provide you in the fall as well. We talked about the coaching, we talked about professional learning teams, the middle school. So there's this fourth item here. I'm just trying to summarize things that we've already talked about. But item number 4, convene a team of middle school teachers to explore really standards-based reporting. What we determined from right away was that instead of really focusing on standards-based reporting, we needed to focus on standards-based instruction. And with the turnaround status for the middle school, instead of having the team that would be looking at reporting, we actually ended up with an instructional leadership team at the middle school level, which I think has been far more beneficial, because I don't think we were necessarily ready to tinker with how it is that we report out on standards, but more let's talk about the standards-based instruction. So although that might look a little different, the middle school certainly has worked very hard on putting together a turnaround plan, which we will provide to you later on this summer. And then we talked about the PSATs. So goal 5, narrowing the achievement gap, developing the appropriate systems and structures to strengthen the multi-tiered system of support. So this is the same as the district improvement strategy. I think that I had set this goal aligned with the district improvement strategy, but since that is something that we weren't able to tackle this year, this as a goal, is not something that I achieved, because it is something that we just didn't have the capacity to work through this year. But if you click that, there are some things that we certainly did. The coaching cycles were really important. Looking at inclusionary practices, supporting our co-teaching partners, providing differentiated instruction training for professional development. We didn't have, building-based data teams, but we certainly had data teams working together, mostly at grade levels, implementing iReady. So I think we did, a lot of work on targeting the achievement gap, really focusing in on students. But it isn't that we really articulated that multi-tiered system of support. And one of the things that we won't know is if we decrease the achievement gap by 5% till we actually have our MCAS results. So we'll see how that all plays out once we get those results. So the goal 6, I don't think I need to speak too much about this one, which is implementing the first year action plans for the 2019 to 2022 district improvement strategy, which articulates the district's mission, vision, core values, and strategic objectives. So this is something that I've already presented on, but I think that, again, this idea that this is an ongoing 4-year process is really important, and those 2 yellow areas are what it is that we're going to work with as a strategy team to continue to monitor progress on the plan. So that's an overview of my goals for this year and how I assess we've done.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Galston, for a very detailed report on that. Open up to questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody? Eileen?
This is a very dense and rich document. Now, when we write the annual superintendent review, will we have the opportunity beforehand to have a conversation with you one-on-one? So when would you like us to start scheduling those?
Beginning next week.
Okay.
So not this week, we got to get through this week. It's very exciting, a lot of professional development going on, and, but, next week and the week after that, all the way up through the 11th of July.
So I'll say a little bit more about that under the first item under the reports, but anyway, any other questions or comments, thoughts? Okay, again, thank you very much. We'll come back to that in just a few moments when we get to reports, and there's some materials in your packet that relate to the evaluation process. Next section is the listed as action items, discussion and vote. The first is the fiscal year 2019 budget transfers. So you have a document that was sent to you that was put together by the Director for Budget and Finance. And what we're going to do, I'm proposing actually that we don't vote on that today, but that superintendent's going to review it and walk through it. I think we got a little bit ahead of a deliberative timeline on this, because we had not had as much discussion in a school committee meeting prior to this. So I think the suggestion's been made, and I think rightly so, that we need to provide a little bit more opportunities for kind of input from the public and awareness of what we're proposing here with kind of end-of-the-year budget reconciliation, if you will. And so Dr. Galston's going to speak a little bit to what is in that document, and then what I would propose that we do is have a subcommittee meeting over the next several weeks, would be probably Budget and Finance and Buildings and Grounds, because I think the major effort here is to move money into cover some of the items on the capital improvement plan, which usually goes through Buildings and Grounds. So we'll try to put those two together. And then it'll come back to the full school committee for a vote. And I'm thinking, I would propose, and we'll finalize this, but I think we may use the July 8th date to do that, because that's a time when everybody's available. I know there's a curriculum subcommittee at 3:30.
And negotiations during the day.
Right.
And a retreat at 5.
Right. And so, you don't have any time in
I'm just curious, what, we
No,
can't, we have a lot of power here, John, but not to actually add hours to the day.
No, so I think what we would probably do, my suggestion would be, is that we actually meet at 5 for this purpose as a school committee, and we can do that in the Phillips Building after the curriculum is over, curriculum subcommittee's over.
4:30 then.
You mean, you're done at 4:30?
Should be.
Okay, well, we'll figure that out, and then we would probably start the retreat at 5:30.
Well, that's fine.
That's kind of what I'm thinking we'll do, which I think hopefully can work. But anyway, so that's, part of what I'm saying is, I don't think we should vote on it today. Let's kind of back up a little bit and provide more opportunities for discussion and input on this kind of end of the budget year reconciliation.
And I need to be setting the building and grounds subcommittee meeting.
Right.
Before July 8th.
Right, yes.
That's going to be hard.
Well, we'll work on it. We'll work on it. Okay, so anyway, Dr. Galston, give us a kind of overview of what's in the transfer.
Sure. So, at this point in time, from Ms. Perkins, we have, reconciled to the point where we think we're going to end up at the end of the fiscal year with an available balance on the budget report of about $424,342. That available budget balance is going to be used for all our payroll expenses that are not encumbered. We do our stipends, substitutes, overtime, additional hours that are going on. We have curriculum work that's happening. There's many things that are happening within the district that we believe will use up the $424,342 that remains. But in terms of where we are above and beyond that, so I just want to go over a few things that we certainly have some funds that are available in our budget above and beyond the $424,342. And that is primarily, we've talked about this throughout the course of the year. We know that we've had instructional aid positions that were not needed and not filled. And I, came to you all, and we did hire kindergarten aides. We were not able to hire the building security officers. I think there was just not enough time in the year to be able to do that. So we had salary savings that are in there. We have the 3 unfilled professional positions, one of which is the teacher, the visually impaired, and 2 other positions that had been budgeted for that were not filled from the budgeting process. We had long-term leaves of absences that resulted in less costly substitute salaries, and then the staff turnover occurring after the budget was voted. This district does not budget for turnover. They don't incorporate that into the budget process. So if we have a very favorable hiring season in terms of hiring people at lower steps than people who had exited, you end up with turnover savings, which we certainly had a lot of this year as well. And then the other area that we had lower than anticipated costs were transportation to Minuteman. We had budgeted for two buses, we ended up with one, which, yes, of course, we're using that for the multi-function student activity buses, but there's still a little bit of leftover in there. As well as the prepaid out-of-district tuition. So if you recall last year, it was one of the first years, I think, that this committee has voted for prepaying tuition because we had money left over in the FY18 budget. And then the other, reason why we have a surplus in our budget would be we budgeted for circuit breaker at 65%, and circuit breaker came in at 72%. So the offset that we were able to take from circuit breaker was larger than anticipated as well. So, I think we said this last year, or I said this, that I think due to the fact that we have some pretty favorable, things happening within our school system, there's also been far better accounting, I believe. I'm not here to say anything about the past, but I do know that, either with, Assistant Superintendent Delay and now Heidi Perkins, I think they are, have worked tirelessly to make sure that, we have everything appropriately accounted for. And in the end, that does mean that because of all the conditions that I stated above, we do have favorability in our budget. So, we've moved forward with some of the items that were part of the budget process in terms of already within the appropriate lines. We talked about the fact that we installed some of the air conditioners in the high school. We've replaced musical instruments whenever possible. We've had some, replacements of soundboards in the middle school and high school auditoriums because they were damaged. So there's been some things that we've done in terms of trying to better our schools across the board along the way. Even with that, there's still additional funds that are available. So at this point, what I think that we would like to do, or what we'd like to propose and then go over with the Budget and Finance Subcommittee and the Buildings and Grounds Subcommittee, is looking at the capital improvement plan, which was, approved by the school committee and supported by the town council, the FY20 capital improvement plan, and even beyond, to see if there aren't items there that we could take care of with the FY19 additional funds, which are already been approved and moved forward in the town side, which would then, I think, in the end, free up funds on the town side for projects that might be available on that side. So I think that would be a logical direction for us to go in terms of having, the surplus funds. I think that I wish, I must say, I'm glad that we have a surplus and not the opposite. I don't know how to phrase that exactly, what I'm trying to say, but I think it's better to have this as a problem than having the opposite. But I do think that we can together come up with a very beneficial way to look at those funds and, move forward with some of the capital improvement plan projects that, potentially might have had to have gone out for borrowing, which would have meant that it would have taken a lot longer to get the projects done. So I think that having this favorability might be able to move forward with some of the projects this summer even. And also there's some ideas around doing some of the design work for some of the capital improvement plan projects that are out in the future. If we could get that design work done now, I'll give you a very good example of one of the items that we'll talk about in the subcommittees, but doing the design work for the middle school boilers, I think it's about a $1.2 million project. We discovered when we were doing the capital improvement plan process this year, if we want to go to the MSBA for an accelerated repair project, which we can get a lot of support from the state, you have to know exactly what it is that you're going to put in terms of a statement of interest. And we didn't have those designs done, so we were not in a position to be able to apply. But if we were to take care of that now, then come December, we'd be ready to submit a statement of interest to help with any kind of boiler replacement that we might need at the middle school level. So, but I agree with Chairman Ports that I think having some additional time to really go in depth with this, with the subcommittees, and explain the thinking that we have, and make sure that it's understood and accepted, makes all the sense in the world. But one last thing, and then I'll stop talking. I've done a lot of talking this evening, but
That's okay.
I know. I think that one of the things that, this is not part of the 5% increase, when we talk about budgeting. Those are operating costs that, we only know what we know when we go in the budget season. But then as the year progresses, like I've just described, circumstances happen that you don't anticipate, that, might end up either being in either direction. I mean, again, there are many districts that it's the opposite. You find out around the course of the year that you have unexpected expenses that drop you below. And I think that's what you try to position yourself so that you don't end up in a crisis. But sometimes it's the opposite, and this is what we've had here in Watertown, and it's not just the first year, it happened last year as well.
Right.
So,
All right, thank you, Dr. Galston. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, we have strong support from the town and very thankful for that. As you point out, there's a variety of savings around various circumstances, both on the salary side and the expense accounts. So when you add that up together, you end up with a favorable situation that we have today. So questions or comments?
I apologize, I do have to leave now. I have about 6 hours of grading, and my grades are due tomorrow. So
Okay.
I've got to run, but
Okay.
Kendra and I will coordinate a meeting between budget finance and building
Great.
grounds
Okay.
in the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
Before July. I will be gone.
Okay, great, okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on the report? Okay, thank you, Dr. Carlson. You're up again. Next item, 2019-20 staffing
update.
Staffing
Sorry, I
update.
lost a little track. Thank you. So where's my staffing update? Well, I can tell you what my staffing update is. I don't seem to have a copy of it in here. Can I see your copy of the staffing update?
Approval of gifts is next.
What's that?
Oh, approval of gifts.
Oh,
is
I'm
next.
sorry, I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Oh, it's
I'm
for the
sorry.
transition. Okay, that's
My fault, I was down in the wrong category.
Sorry.
You're
No wonder I
right,
couldn't
you're
find
right, my fault. I'm up, approval of gifts, my apologies.
it. Yes,
That's your job.
exactly.
That's your job. So approval of gifts, we have 7, I just counted these up here, I won't list them all necessarily, there's 7 different gifts from the Watertown Middle School, from parents and others from the community, from Watertown Middle School field trip donations for total is $150. We have one gift of $100 to the Allison Donovan Memorial Donation, and then $500 to the John Hayward Scholarship. So is there a motion to approve the gifts?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. And then we have a disposition of surplus property. We only have just one item is a lift that's broken and cannot be fixed. Is there a motion to dispose of?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. So next up, actually, is me, so you get another break.
Good, thank you.
So next, under reports is the annual school committee evaluation of the superintendent, and Eileen already kind of started that conversation and mentioned part of the process here. So in your packets and online is the first document is the document that we've used in the past several years. That is the evaluation report that each of you is asked to fill out. And it has the goals listed that the superintendent just went through, all 6 goals. It's a kind of a 3-part evaluation, which, again, we've used the same 3 parts before. The first part, step 1 it's called, is the individual kind of annual goals. And you're asked to rate it according to those categories and then make comments. And Dr. Galston has given you that report and is available for conversations, as she mentioned before. So I'm asking people to send this in to me by July 12th. So that gives you the kind of time frame within which you will, if you're going to have a conversation with Dr. Galston, you should do that prior to that. The second part of the evaluation, step 2, is to assess performance on standards. And so these are the standards from the state. There's 4 standards: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. And then there are 4 categories of ratings: unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, and exemplary. You recall last year we actually had a different kind of an in-between category that we used for the first year, but I think at this year we're back to the standard format that the state provides. And Dr. Galston, I think, intends to send everybody a report that will talk about kind of her work in the context of these standards, correct?
Yes.
So that will, you'll have that as well. And then step 3 is kind of the overall rating performance, again, using those same criteria, the same standards, rating categories from the state, and then comments. And that, you also have in your packet the standards and indicators, Massachusetts Model System for Educator Evaluation, which has the rubrics for the different standards for the state component, which is the step 2. So that's a lot. It's similar to what we've done before, but there's a lot in this evaluation. And the retreat on July 8th, part of that time we'll have Dorothy Presser from MASC there, and she will also talk a little bit about the evaluation process. And we've kind of all done it once, but I think it would be helpful to have her come back, answer questions that people may have, and kind of help get us all on basically moving forward in the same direction to do the evaluation. I think that's all I want to say about that. Question? Pardon? That's for the school committee thing, self-evaluation. Yeah. This can be, yeah, this can be just, to me, is fine. This is fine. Any questions on that? Questions, comments? Nope. Okay.
Can I
Yes.
ask a quick question? I think last year you had a Word document or an editable document of that. Could we get that, maybe? My handwriting is really not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Agreeable to sending you.
No, absolutely. I will.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't you get it as a Word document, or is it a PDF?
It's a PDF
Okay.
in the
I
packet.
will send it as a
so-
Word document.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. From my perspective, definitely.
Great.
Type it. Don't handwrite it, type it. I'll get that out to you right away.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Other questions? Okay. Now, Dr. Galston, back to you.
Excellent.
Staffing update.
Hold on one sec, hold please, I was just looking at the, okay, thank you. So I wanted to just provide the community with a brief update around some staffing updates in general at the elementary level, and then just a few other words about some changes that we have within the district. So as part of the FY20 budget process, you know that we, as part of the level services budget, we asked for and allocated 3 additional elementary teachers because of the fact that we knew with class size guidelines and some of the bubbles that we have, that we would need to have 3 additional elementary teachers. But throughout the process of, the numbers of students coming and going and numbers of students who might need special education services, the leadership team has really considered all of the available resources and has done some reallocation in order to meet the needs of our students and our schools. So I want to preface this by saying that this is just an update. There is no increase in staffing, so it is not something that requires the school committee to vote on it. It's just an update, information for you to have. So right now at the Hosmer, we have the addition of the grade 3 classroom teacher. That was the one that was funded through the FY20 budget. But as I keep talking about the fact that our kindergarten numbers were not as large this year as we anticipated, and it is still true that there are 94 students enrolled in kindergarten at the Hosmer, which prompted us to reduce from 6 classrooms to 5. And that made room, in essence, for the addition of a pre-K classroom at the Hosmer, but that is fully funded by the pre-K tuition. So we have, a net 1 of an elementary teacher from that process. Additionally, something that outside of the budgetary process, we had a digital learning specialist at the Hosmer who retired, and we decided that a reallocation of that instructional technology position to a digital learning support specialist would move the district's mission forward in terms of supporting teachers. It's just like that coaching model. This person would do some direct services for students, but more importantly, it's really working with teachers to help implement some of the digital learning that we have available to them. So that is very exciting. Then at the Lowell Elementary School, we have the addition of the grade 2 classroom, which is the one that was funded through the FY20 budget. But 2, and Kathy is here as well, so she can, support the decisions that were made if you have any questions. But we determined that in the ISP program, we currently have 2 teachers, but due to the fact that there are no grade 5 students, we can meet the 48-month grade span with just 1 teacher currently. So that's a reduction of 1 ISP teacher, as well as the reduction of 1 special education inclusion educator. And this is, just looking at the numbers of students and the grade levels that they're in, that is something that is not necessarily needed at this time. However, that being said, based on class size guidelines, we do have the need for an addition of a grade 3 classroom, which we are now looking at class sizes of upwards to 24 in grade 3 at the Lowell, and that is, it's not tenable. It's certainly something that we could do if we needed to, but due to the fact that we had this availability of FTE from those 2 things I just mentioned, we are increasing 1 grade 3 classroom as well. The other area that an unanticipated move in, we need to add an additional grade 1 teacher at the Lowell as well. The Lowell is getting very large. And if you remember, the Lowell always had last year about 82, 83 students in kindergarten in our enrollment reports, which means that they were a little above the guidelines all along. But we've had many people move in to the Lowell, into grade 1, and therefore now they were looking at class sizes of 22, maybe even 23. So we've moved forward and added a grade 1 teacher from those 2 reallocations. And then last but not least, the addition of a reading specialist. So this is something that, based again on the reallocations, we believe that having an additional reading specialist at the Lowell Elementary School will help us as we focus on literacy, to have somebody who can deliver those tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. And then last but not least, at the Cunniff, we have an addition of a grade 5 classroom. The update that I sent you was basically due to the fact that I had incorrectly said that that was one of the 3 additional elementary school FTE. Actually, that is a reallocation because the kindergarten right now only has 41 students, so we only needed 2 classrooms. So we were able to reallocate and add that grade 5 classroom. I just want to be very clear that, at this exact moment in time, there is 1 FTE that has not yet been allocated. That is part of the FY20 budget process. But I am being very, very, I'm closely monitoring the enrollment. And not that we have a big burst in kindergarten, but, right now we're at capacity at the Cunniff. We're getting close at the Lowell. We're not near close at the Hosmer. We have plenty of room at the Hosmer, but I have a feeling that maybe we might end up needing that FTE for an additional classroom, but I just want to hold on to that right now. And I do fully believe that that's going to be used. If it's not used for a classroom teacher, one of the things that we had budgeted for as a request for FY20 was some administrative support. And if we don't end up needing that FTE, then that might be something that we would be able to fund. So just fully making sure the community is aware of the ins and outs of staffing. One other thing I just wanted to mention, that we've been thinking a lot about curriculum alignment and the coordination of curriculum. And one thing that we are going to be moving forward with is, instead of having K-5 curriculum coordinators curriculum coordinator for math and science, we're going to move that into a K-8 position. The K-8 literacy coordinator position was always a K-8, but we're incorporating ELA and social studies in that position as well. The goal is over the course of not just, over the course of 2 years, then we would also look at what we're doing with high school coordination and end up with, right now we have 6 to 12 coordinators, but we're looking to move that to become 8 to 12 coordinators. So, and we'll go far more into detail about this next year as that transition plan is finalized. But I think it's important that if you think about it, a 6 to 12 coordinator is really responsible for 2 transitions, the transition from 5th to 6th and the transition from 8 to 9. That's a lot. So we believe that if we go K to 8 and then 8 to 12, I know people are like, what? That's like an overlap. I think that really reinforces the fact that transition 8 to 9 is probably one of the most important ones that needs to have a lot of sets of eyes on it, but keep the elementary transition in the hands of the person who really is doing the K to 8. So that's the idea. I think that we're seeing, from feedback and from data, we need to do a little bit more of, curriculum work at the middle school level, and I think that this is going to help us to do that. So just an update on staffing.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Can I ask
Dr.
a
Galson.
question?
Yes.
Yeah, and then-
In the past, just from a parent perspective, in the past, I've gotten information about who the new teachers are that were being hired, but I haven't seen anything like that. I just wonder if that's going out through all the elementary schools, or how is that being communicated? Because it's just new teachers to parents that aren't
Yep.
aware of them.
So I hear what you're saying, and I can work with the principals to send out something. Since we do the move-up days, I think obviously the people who have the teachers know about the new teachers, but you're right about the larger community finding out who the new staff members are. I'll work with the principals. We haven't hired them all yet, but once they are hired, they could put together like a staffing kind of.
Just a little information on
Yep,
each.
yeah.
Thanks.
I've met very great teachers coming in. They're very excited about the new hires that I keep meeting every day.
Other questions, comments? Yes.
I just wanted to make a quick comment that I like the restructure of K to 8 and then eventually 8 to 12, especially because right now we already have a really effective and started up coaching model in the elementary schools, and expanding that to the middle schools, it would be nice that can kind of be the same management and someone with experience in that for next year.
Other comments, questions? Thank you for presenting this, because I think it's helpful to have some sense of the kind of where new positions are going, but what actually comes out in this even more perhaps is the kind of transitions and the reallocations that are done within each building that happen every year, really. It's not that this is unique.
Yep.
And it happens every year where you have to, in a relatively small district where you have to accommodate kind of bubbles that go through in terms of class sizes, you end up having to make these. And thank you to the teachers who are flexible enough to move from one grade to another. I think that's great. And we'll have more conversations about their coordinators, I think, when you
Yep.
kind of, you're announcing kind of step one for next year, and step two will be the following one. But, to your point, those two transitions from 5 to 6 and then from 8 to 9 are really important. And in some ways, the 5 to 6 has a different challenge to it, because you're going from 3 different schools to one. And that's, to have the same people who are doing the K to 5 also doing that transition into 6, I think is very helpful. Anything else? Okay.
I just have a quick
Yes, Amy.
How come the middle school and the high school is on these staffing updates?
I don't think we have any major changes, other than, other than what we already are aware of in terms of adding the middle school coaches. There really aren't any reallocations other than we've already discussed, at least not enough to, it hasn't risen to the point where I felt like, oh boy, we've got a lot of changes going on, and I want to make sure that you know about them. I don't think we're really doing.
Even for the retirements at the high school?
Well, you'll have new staff, but we're not
You don't have
reallocating that. They're still, they're not changing those, like, the inclusion math, teacher at the high school, we're just replacing with another inclusion math teacher. So I think maybe what you're getting at when we do the next staffing report, that might be a good time to really go over the list of the new teachers. But these are real changes, not just simply replacing somebody.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Sure.
What's the difference between the instructional technology position and the digital learning support specialist?
So the digital learning support specialist, like I said, is a little bit more like a coach in the sense of they will work directly with teachers in their classrooms. I'm just directly, and this was something that was decided by the leadership team, and just thinking about, please don't take this the wrong way, but gone are the days where you pick up your class and you take them to the lab, the computer lab. We don't do that anymore. The technology's in the classroom. So rather than pick up the kids and go to the computer lab, we're going to take the digital learning support specialist and go to the classroom and support the implementation of the integration of technology with, social studies or literacy or whatever it might be in the classroom. It's just where we're headed in this century. So that's how that's going to go.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Building for the Future. Start with the elementary schools project. Mark?
Not much more to report than we've been continuing to report. Wednesday evening, we will continue to evaluate updated designs for the 3 elementary schools. We had a big discussion last time about exterior finishes. Exterior finishes were dropped off in Steve Magoon's office for members of the committee that wanted to take an opportunity to view them. So I think we're going to spend more time Wednesday evening on some exterior finishes that were brought up as an issue. And we're just about finalizing the negotiations with the owner's project manager for a contract. That's where we are on that.
That's Wednesday, 6 o'clock here.
6 o'clock here in this room.
We also have the sustainability goals. We'll have some discussion about that. Okay. High school project.
Really, there's not much to report on the high school project, other than, we're moving forward with the request for services for the designer. That's where we're at right now with that. And I do believe the OPM is coming to the school building committee meeting?
On July 11th,
On
that's
July
why we
11th.
added the meeting, because there was some significant discussion last meeting about design and finishes. So we decided we're going to spend more time on that and had a separate meeting. The OPM is coming in on July 11th
High school OPM.
for the high school
Yep.
to go over the next process for the design.
Great.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for that update.
Thanks,
That's
Mark.
good.
Thanks, Dee Dee.
It's exciting.
We sent out a note.
School committee chair, quick report. As Lily said, and most people know, today was the last day of school.
Yes.
So I want to, special thanks to all the educators in the district, the teachers, and everybody else in classrooms and specialists and administration for, I think a successful year. So thank you very much. And thanks to the parents who helped support that process. And certainly congratulations to all the students, particularly the high school students, who all of us met not too long ago at their graduation. And then today, the middle school students in the morning also graduated or received their certificates to go on to the high school next year. So congratulations to them. The other comment I would make is that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a retreat on July 8th, and we may end up adjusting the beginning time of that, but it won't be before 5 o'clock. It would be perhaps just a little bit later if we do adjust that. But that retreat will focus on two topics. One, which I've already mentioned, will be the superintendent evaluation process, so we will talk about that. But then I think also, and this is another document that you have, which I can also send out electronically, is a self-evaluation that I'm asking you to fill out. And we last did this in the fall of 2017. So some of us were here then and some of us weren't. So I think it's a good opportunity. Every 2 years or so is a good opportunity for people within the committee to write as little or as much as you want. There are, in this document, there are 6 or 7 categories. This is an instrument that it kind of builds upon a MASC document. There's a rating scale, a 1 to 5 rating scale, and then you have your opportunity to talk about strengths and areas for improvement. And I was going to propose, unless people feel otherwise, that we follow a process similar to what we did when we did this 2 years ago, where we sent our evaluation to Dorothy Presser, and then she will compile it and we'll come up with a kind of summary document, and then that will be, she will present that and kind of, we'll look at that, we'll see that, and use that to build a discussion at the retreat about kind of what are some areas. She'll give it to us in advance, but what are some areas that we want to focus on in terms of the kind of activities and et cetera for the school committee. If we send it to her, so when we did this last time, some people wanted to respond confidentially, and so the way that can be done, if you send it to me, it's not going to be confidential. But if you send it to her and she keeps it and she does the summary document, then your document, what you sent, remains confidential. We had that discussion last time. I don't know if people remember that, but that's what we ended up doing because people felt that they wanted to have that option for confidentiality of their evaluation. So that's why I put that out there as a proposal to do it this time in the similar fashion. Now, what we could do here, I can confirm with Dorothy, I was talking with Kendra, there's like a Google form that could be used that would make it easier for her perhaps to compile it. I'll confirm that she would like to do it that way, and then we can send you out instructions how to do that. But other comments or questions about the process? Is that something makes sense? Or do you have different? Eileen, you're pondering.
I'm thinking, yeah. No, I'm wondering about the confidential piece only because confidential and anonymous are two different things. Confidential could be just within the school committee.
Well, I'm sorry.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't want to know who feels what way about something?
I misspoke. You're right. These are, well, confidential is probably the wrong term. They would be anonymous to us, correct?
Okay, and just asking, and I really am just asking, what is the benefit of doing it anonymously to us?
That's what
Because if I get an anonymous letter, let's say, from someone, if there's no name on it, I have a standard practice of, I won't address it. I'm wondering,
Well,
I don't know, I'm mixed
It's
thinking with this.
Okay,
Confidential, absolutely, whatever we talk about, is among us, but I'm just wondering.
well, it's what we chose to do 2 years ago, so I was just following that model. It's not that I'm necessarily wedded to it, but that's what we ended up doing.
I'll accept either decision, but I just wanted to make sure this was a decision that we made and not just sort of automatically going along.
Okay, well, it's open to discussion. I mean, Mark, you had a comment on it?
Lindsay was before me.
Lindsay, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I wasn't part of the group when it was done last time, so this is new to me. But in general, I just personally find feedback a lot more helpful when I have a perception of who it's from and what it's about. Like, I think we're a small group, and I mean, like Eileen said, I'm sort of ambivalent either way, but I think feedback for all of us is more helpful when we know the perspective it's coming from, so.
I'm going to say this, I said it 2 years ago. First of all, we did this 2 years ago, and I don't think it did anything for us as a committee. Second of all, I'm evaluated every 2 years by the committee, the citizens of the town of Watertown. That's my evaluation, and I consider that my evaluation. I get to sit here if they choose me to sit here. So that, to me, is what I think my ultimate goal is. School committee is every 4 years, so that's different. I did state that then. I will state it again tonight. I don't think that we got anything out of it the last time, and I'm not sure we're going to get anything out of it this time. So, I'm just hesitant to fill it out. I'm going to be on the ballot again in November. That will be my evaluation for the job that I've done for this community.
Go ahead, Kendra.
I see it as an opportunity potentially to start a conversation during the retreat. I don't necessarily see it as an evaluation, but a way to engage with I understand, a way to engage with other people on the committee about things we would like to do better, things that we feel like we're doing well, things we'd like to focus on. So that is the way that I'm thinking about it and the way that I see it and the way I see the benefit of it, and that's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I was the same way. I mean, I understand your point, Mark. I mean, we are on the ballot, so ultimately, that's the accountability that we have, is to the public and to the voters, absolutely.
That's the most important thing.
What is the?
Not how we feel about ourselves.
Well, it's not so much how we feel about ourselves. I mean, I guess I view it as more, what should we be doing? What could we be doing differently? What are our strengths? What are some of the areas that we want to improve on? What are some strategies to go about doing that? It's simply a tool to help to give everybody some kind of an opportunity to think about that in advance and say, we're doing good in this area, but we're not doing so good over here. We ought to be doing maybe A, B, and C, or let's consider A, B, and C. So I view it definitely more in that context So maybe evaluation isn't the right word for this, but that's kind of the MASC word that.
Can I
that
make a
was there.
suggestion?
Yeah,
Maybe
you-
we could come up with our own tool that we use and not have to use something so standardized that someone like Eileen, that woman would look at or even be part of. Like, maybe you just ask us all to share 2 or 3 things on an index card that we either maybe it's the glows, and, like when you go to a conference, you have your bads and your glows, right? So I would share something I'm struggling with on school committee or something I think is great. And then that's a good way to open up. Then you just have index cards and we all share them, just like students would. Just a
Well-
suggestion.
Right. No, I mean, that's trying to get the same idea. I mean, these are, kind of categories that MASC has. I'm not wedded to them by any means. We could do some.
Maybe we could just read that as like just as an idea of a concern that I would have and say, oh, well, yeah, that would be something that I would like to work on, or I think this is something we do well. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't seem so formal and it does still spark up good conversation.
But I think that we could do something like that. My point would be, it's important, I think, to do it ahead of time, so you've given some thought to it, and then come in.
No, I mean, yeah, do it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I read this document correctly, it's about the process. It's not about any content. This document is asking us questions about how we feel about the processes that we go through. It doesn't say, are there areas we should spend more time on in terms of content? So as long as we make that clear, then I think we could do it. I do agree, I'm not sure what we got out of it last time. I think we were hoping to have a conversation that had a lower simmering point than we had at some
Yep.
meetings. But in the end, it didn't resolve our issues.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'm fine with doing something that's a little bit scaled down from what this is, if that speaks to the concerns that are being raised. But I would send it out. I guess I'm not hearing a particular concern about being anonymous. Is that an issue, or maybe not? You okay?
Makes no difference.
Doesn't matter?
Well, it tends to, if someone has a strong opinion, it may tend to do the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish and fix a problem. It may create a problem if you do it where somebody puts their name to it.
If they-
It may create additional
But we're only
problems.
7 people. You can usually figure out. You don't have to be
Not all the time.
surgeon to figure out who's saying what. And then when you start the conversation, it becomes obvious who's,
I think doing it anonymously is just fine. I would say it's fine, and then you aren't kind of connecting. Since this is about process, it's about how things are moving. It's not about people or other things that we're doing. It's not about content areas. Then having it anonymous, and you don't tie those concerns to a person, is probably a better way to start the conversation.
Okay. All right, so what I hear is, let me go back to talk with Dorothy a little bit about this, what's a good way to proceed, and maybe we'll end up with a scaled-down version, something a little bit simpler than this. This is a little bit lengthy. We can do something that I think will kind of get at the similar thing, the point of trying to kind of get an idea of what are some of the directions that people want the school committee to go. I mean, a good example, we had this conversation earlier in the year about trying to have kind of meetings at different schools, right? We talked about doing that during the course of the year. We didn't do that this year. There's too many things on the plate to really do that. Not full school committee meetings, but kind of community-based meetings. Superintendent had brought that up, and she'd had experience with that and thought it was quite successful. Is that something we should do? I mean,
Put it
that's an
as a question.
example. That's an example in my mind of
Put it
something.
as a question.
Well-
Put it on the survey. I mean, if you were trying to get to that, then we should be asking these questions.
No, I don't want to necessarily, lead the response, but, create the opportunity for people to make some comments. Okay. I will work on this and get back to you. All right, thanks. Superintendent's report.
Excellent. So I think I've done a lot of talking this evening. I guess the most important thing that I would like to say is just echoing what you also said, is just conveying the deep sense of gratitude that I have for the educators within the Watertown Public Schools and all that they've done for the last 180 days for our students, and the support systems that we have in place, and the community that supports our children, the families, across the board. I think we have a very dynamic, engaged, and committed community for our students and the children of Watertown. So just deep gratitude, and I think people are very well aware of the fact, and if you're not, every teacher really needs to have some time off in the summer to recharge and rejuvenate. We have a few teachers on the board here, but it is essential. They pour out their hearts and souls every single day, and it takes quite some time to come out of that in the summer and feel that you're ready to tackle on the next year. So just thank you to the educators, and also remember that every single one of our teachers and educators in our system, they work in the summer. They do. They're either taking classes, attending workshops, planning curriculum, thinking about their students, going over the data. I don't know if you caught that picture I sent to you from the Hosmer Elementary School, where one of the big things that the staff did across all elementary schools was look at the data. The next year's teachers look at the data from this year so they know what to think about for next year. So they're already thinking about September. But just thank you to everybody. And thank you to the school committee for supporting the work of the public schools. So very, very grateful.
All right, thank you, Dr. Galston. Next would be new business. Any new business? Seeing none, announcements, we've already, I think, made all of these. The building committee in 2 days here, retreat on July 8th, and our next scheduled school committee meeting is July 22nd. Public forum. Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Shelley, one of these days you gotta make a statement or something.